Jack the Ripper, right. Everybody knows the name, but today we're going deeper.
Deeper, what, like beyond the blood and gore?
Exactly. We're talking about why this case, even after all these years, still fascinates us.
And we've got a ton of sources to dig through.
Historical accounts, modern analysis. We're even going to bust some myths today.
It's kind of like this case is a historical Rorschach test. You know, it sort of shows us our own anxieties.
Oh, totally. And how we see these unsolved mysteries.
Right. So to really get Jack, we got to get Victorian London, 1888 Whitechapel.
Ugh, talk about a gloomy scene, right? You're walking those streets, it's foggy, dark, poverty everywhere.
And danger around every corner.
Yeah.
Don't forget, this was a time and place where fear was just part of life.
Yeah, and then Jack the Ripper plunges a knife into that, ramping up the terror to a whole new level. And here's something I bet most people get wrong. You always hear Jack's victims, all prostitutes.
Right.
But that's not the whole story, is it? Our sources, especially Hallie Rubenhold's work, set the record straight.
Yeah, she really breaks it down. Prostitute back then was almost a catch-all term.
Like, if you were a woman, struggling, living in poverty, boom, you were slapped with that label.
Sadly, yeah.
Whether you were actually, in the sex trade or not, didn't matter.
Which is why it's so important to look at these women as individuals.
Like Marianne Nichols, right. The first of the canonical 5, police records say prostitute.
But Rubenhold digs deeper and uncovers so much more. Marianne was a mother. She was just trying to get by.
And she had to turn to sex work to survive.
It was survival.
Hmm.
But that one detail, that label, it's defined her for over a century.
It's awful. Like, we're taking these women, already victims, and simplifying them even further.
Erasing their humanity, just like the system back then did. And, that's a pattern we see even today.
Oh, 100%. Marginalized communities hit hardest by crime, then their stories get twisted.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got this backdrop of social unrest, a system that's failing these women, and then the murders begin. So let's talk about the Ripper's MO, how he left his mark.
Well, the first thing that gets you is the brutality and how it escalates with each victim. It's like he's experimenting, getting bolder. You've got Marianne Nichols, her throat slashed, abdomen mutilated.
Terrific.
Then a week later, Annie Chapman. Even more extensive wounds. Some of her internal organs were missing.
God, it's like something out of a nightmare.
And it gets worse. That's when we get to what's called the double event. The double event. September 30th, 1888, 2 women, Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes, murdered just hours apart.
Woo! Talk about upping the terror. So 2 murders in one night. That's got to be what really threw London into a panic, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the city was already on edge, but this
Right.
was different.
Okay, so we were talking about the brutality escalating with each murder, but what made the double event stand out?
Well, both had those horrific hallmarks of the Ripper's style. But get this, Stride's murder, it was like he hesitated. Her throat was slashed like the others, but that was it. No abdominal mutilations, nothing else.
So strange, like he was interrupted or something.
Right. And that's what's got everyone talking. Even now, was he disturbed? Did he not have time to finish? It's like this one difference, this one deviation makes the double event even more perplexing.
Fascinating. It's like we catch these glimpses into his process even without knowing who he was. What about Eddowes? Was her murder more what we expect from Jack?
Tragically, yes. They found her body only 45 minutes after Stride's. And this time, the brutality was undeniable.
Oh, girl.
Throat slashed, abdomen ripped open, her face horrifically mutilated.
It's just unimaginable. Okay, so picture this. Victorian London, these brutal killings, and the killer, he just disappears every time. The police had to be feeling the heat, right?
Absolutely. And remember, this is way before DNA or fancy forensics.
Yeah.
They were stuck with witness statements, most of them unreliable.
Right, and relying on what they could see at the crime scenes.
Which wasn't much. And with those tools, you're basically groping in the dark.
Talk about a needle in a haystack. And then to make things worse, you've got Jack's letters. Didn't those throw a wrench into everything?
The Dear Boss letter, the From Hell letter, those are the famous ones. But the police got hundreds of letters, all claiming to be from Jack.
Oh, wow.
And here's the kicker. Most of them, probably all of them, were fakes.
Ugh. So people saw an opportunity, a chance to exploit the situation.
Exactly. They wanted their 5 minutes of fame, even if it meant playing on everyone's fears. And sadly, it worked. Those letters fueled the media frenzy, that morbid fascination with the case.
Which is something we still see today, right? I mean, look at how true crime sometimes gets caught up in sensationalism.
Totally. It's a dangerous cycle. The gorier the details, the more the public wants to know. but that can actually hurt an investigation.
Makes you think, even if they'd caught Jack, would it have stopped the fear? Or would it have just added to his legend?
It's a good question. But what we do know is that the murder stopped after Mary Jane Kelly.
Right, the last of the canonical five.
And her murder was by far the most brutal.
They found her in her room, right?
Yeah, mutilated, beyond recognition. Even the police, who had seen it all by that point, were horrified. And then, nothing. The letters stopped. The killing stopped.
So what happened? Did Jack the Ripper just vanish? Like he just melted away, right? All that terror and then poof, gone. Did he skip town, die? Maybe got arrested for something totally different, took those dark secrets to his grave? I mean, it messes with your head a little, doesn't it?
That's the thing about Jack, isn't it? He left us with a blank space where the answers should be.
And people have been trying to fill that blank for over a century.
Right. We've got theories, suspects. Yeah. Everybody's got their pet solution.
Our sources mention so many. Montague John Druitt, Walter Sickert, Aaron Kosminski. We even talked about that crazy one with Prince Albert Victor, right? Like something out of a movie.
Oh, absolutely. It's almost like each generation needs to find their own Jack the Ripper.
Like it's a game with no right answer.
Well, the evidence is so shaky that it kind of is a game in a way. Most of it's just circumstantial, so people can fit the pieces together however they like.
And it's not just guys either, right? We got to talk about Jill the Ripper. The idea that Jack wasn't even a dude. Why does that one stick around, do you think?
It's such a good twist. Like back then, a female serial killer, unthinkable.
Total role reversal. Instead of a creepy guy lurking in the shadows, you've got a woman able to move around unnoticed, maybe even used her gender to get close to the victims, gain their trust.
Right, and some witnesses even said the killer looked kind of feminine.
Ooh, see? Suspicious.
And don't forget, they often found the victim's clothes messed up. Could point to a woman being involved somehow.
Wow. Imagine if they were so busy chasing this idea of a male monster that they missed obvious clues because the real killer was a woman. It just didn't compute.
Exactly. Shows how much those Victorian biases shaped everything.
So who are the top contenders for Jill the Ripper? Any frontrunners?
Mary Piercy pops up a lot. She killed her lover's wife and child in 1890. Really gruesome stuff, especially how she mutilated them. Sound familiar?
Ugh, it does. This whole case is like a hall of mirrors. Every clue seems to lead to a dead end, So all these years later, all this tech we've got now, can we ever really know who Jack the Ripper was?
The million-dollar question. They've tried getting DNA from what little evidence is left. Some people even claim they matched Aaron Kosminski to a victim.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah, but not everyone's convinced. Too much worry about contamination, whether the evidence was preserved correctly all these years. Stuff.
So the mystery remains. But even without knowing for sure, this deep dive has been wild. It's bigger than just one killer,
Totally agree.
It's about how we see history, how we try to understand these awful crimes, and how sometimes the not knowing is just as powerful.
You said it. We might never get that satisfying aha moment, but maybe that's okay.